Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing imaginary numbers part 3 division. But before we do that, let's review a little bit because we like to review. Remember, this is just counting to 10 if that's what you want it to be, and I will do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the answer is -1. Keep in mind, multiples of 4 are at the top. All right, I told y'all you'd miss that, and some of y'all keep missing it. Darn. All right, remember the negative here. Let's just pretend it's not there. Let's blot it out, and let's count to 6. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, we get -1 again. But there's an extra negative, and we have to apply it, and the answer is -1, which is +1. Moving on. Keep in mind it's socrative. If I'm talking about number 3, then that's what I mean. This is just like terms. We've seen this. That and that make -5, and this make +2. Let's don't make it hard. And let's put it in standard form at socrative, A plus BI form. No spaces, please. This subtraction is as easy as addition, but we do have to distribute. So let's take an extra step and do that. So it'd be -8 plus 6i. And then it's just like terms. So these two make -22, and these two make 5i. Everybody can do that. Multiplication, there's a little bit more to it than that. Remember, you have to multiply 4 times. It's like multiplying binomials, so you can do that. And we'd get that. And then that would become a -1. And we get 12 plus 5i plus 2, which is 14 plus 5i. All right, we're real good at that now. And then there's this thing called a complex conjugate, where the real part stays the same and the imaginary part changes sign. So I could ask you this. Some of y'all missed that on the previous exercise. I just said, hey, what's the complex conjugate? And the answer is 3 minus 2i. I mean, come on, that's as easy as it gets. And then there's this true-false question, which is true. The product of the complex conjugates is always a real number. Keep in mind, this is math class. We can use the word always. All right, number 8. We get to this. This is the new thing. But before we do that, let's look at something old. Let's apply something old to something new. Kind of sounds like we're getting married or something. We need something blue. All right, if we were to type this into our calculator, there's your blue, then we would get something different. That means that this is not simplified, and we don't like things that are not simplified. But if we look at this and we type it into our calculator, we get the exact same thing. That means it is simplified. Well, what's the difference? The difference is we have a radical on the bottom. That's just one of those things in mathematics. You know, math people are particular, and they don't like radicals on the bottom of a fraction. And so we have to satisfy that. We may not want to, but we have to. All right, so that I, by definition, is the square root of -1. And so we got to get the I off. And the way we do that is multiply top and bottom by I. Keep in mind that this right here has a value of 1. Anything times 1 is itself. That's the multiplicative identity property. Need to see that demonstrated. All right, and so this would be 7i over 4i squared. Well, we know now that I squared is -1, and we get 7i over -4. Well, also, math people are so particular, they don't like a negative on the bottom either. Well, in this case, this is where you just move it to the top. Let's don't make that hard. And it'd be -7i over 4. At socrative, you can either type this 0 plus 7i over 4, or just -7i over 4. Sorry, that should be a minus. Moving on. All right, so that's kind of the same thing. You might want to pause the video and see if you can get that right. So we would again multiply top and bottom by I over I, and this would be 3i plus 8i squared over 5i squared. And each one of those I squareds becomes -1. So I'm going to write this as 3i minus 8 over -5. And then we kind of need to multiply by -1. So let's do that. A lot to this. And so the top would become -3i plus 8 over 5. Now, we've got to get that. We don't have this formatted right. Technically, it's 8 minus 3i over 5. Now, this is an acceptable format of the answer right here. And if we were doing a paper test, I would take that. But we have to type something into Socrative that's going to be, that we need to be consistent. All right, so we're going to rewrite this as 8/5 minus 3i over 5. And at Socrative, it'll look like this. 8/5 minus 3i/5. The I has to be with that 3 right here at Socrative, or it's no good. Don't put the I over here with the 5. We don't like that. Let's move on. All right, pause the video and see if you can get that right. That's another one. I went ahead and multiplied that out and got that. All right, that's fun. Love those boxes. And then this becomes -1. This becomes -1. And so this would be 12i plus 8 over 3. All right, so the bottom's already positive, but then we've got to format it for Socrative in standard form. So I'm going to rewrite it as 8 plus 12i over 3. And again, that is an acceptable format when it's written. But then we have to do 8/3 plus 12i over 3. Now, you need to recognize that this portion right here reduces. So that's going to be wrong. You might be frowning at me and say, man, that's just too much. I can't do it. Surely you can reduce a fraction. So it'd be 8/3 plus 4i. Don't do the 1. Yeah, there's a 1, but don't do that. I can't account for that. All right, and so that's what we'd type in, and we'd be really, really happy. But then it comes down to this. If we look at the previous 3 problems, the bottom was 1 term. Let's see if I can do this quickly. I don't want to waste your time. 1 term. Let's move on to the next problem. Whoa, it ain't going to let me. 1 term. All right, let's move on to the next problem. It was 1 term. Anytime it's 1 term, you can just do the top and bottom by I. But when the bottom is 2 terms, if you just did the top and bottom by I, and you may want to play around with that, you're more than welcome to. And so we got to do a lot of multiplication. So it'd be 40 minus 24i over 25 plus 15, minus 15i plus 15i, and then minus 9i squared. All right, and we would get 40 minus 24i. That cancels over 25 plus 9, which is 40 minus 24i over 34. Now, if we were going to leave it as that one fractional format, you need to recognize that all your coefficients are even numbers. And so technically what we're doing is multiplying top and bottom by 1/2 over 1/2, and we get 10 minus 12i over 17. And then that would be an acceptable answer on a written, but we've got to do something for Socrative. So the answer for Socrative is 10/17 minus 12i over 17. No spaces, please. All right, we have 2 more of these because they're so much fun. Pause the video and see if you can get that right. That we have to multiply the top and bottom by the complex conjugate, which is of the denominator, 7 plus 4i. We're always doing, I didn't point that out, I should have, that we're doing the complex conjugate of the denominator, but you should sort of know that. All right, when you multiply, you'd get that, and then that becomes -1, that becomes -1, that and that cancel, and that's what conjugates do. And so I'm going to go ahead and say that's +8 and add that to 21. We're to that point now. We get 29 plus 2i over, let's see, that would make +16. 49 and 16 is 65. Again, that's an acceptable answer on a written test, but for Socrative, let's do 29 65ths plus 2i over 65. You would need to determine if these fractions would reduce, and clearly they don't. So that makes us happy. We have one more. Pause the video and see if you can get that right. We would multiply the top and bottom by the complex conjugate of the denominator, and then we would multiply it out. That's 8 multiplications. We have 8 terms. These terms always cancel. That becomes a -1. That becomes a -1. The top would be, let's see, that's a -4, and -12 make -16 plus 22i. These like terms. And then the bottom, that's really a +16 is 20. Now, You need to recognize that if you want to go for that other format, you could go ahead. Let's just go ahead, since we're doing this for Socrative, and split it into negative 16/20 plus 22I over 20 and reduce those. So 4 goes into both of those. So that would be negative 4/5 plus 11I over 10. Okay, guys, there'll, of course, be a few more problems because I love you guys and I miss you. We're all happy, and we'll see you later.